Luka's Kids, it's Luka's Kids, it's Luka's Kids.
Welcome back to another exciting episode of Luka's Kids. In this episode, we're going to keep on going forward with a look at Ford Pro Stock kits. With our last episode taking a look at MPC's shot at doing the Pro Stock kits in the early 70s, Monogram took over the helm in the early 80s and started producing these fantastic kits depicting the Pro Stocks of the day. And these were quite a leap forward. As nice as that MPC Pinto Pro Stock was, these Thunderbirds were just a quantum leap forward. It was amazing what 10 years did in model kit making technology. So we're going to take a look at this beautiful thing, and this is going to be very similar to what I showed you with the Monogram stock cars. This kit was reused and reused several times by Monogram to depict different Ford Thunderbirds throughout the years. Just changing a couple of things like decals, but they also did a couple different versions. They had a different rear spoiler and a different hood scoop. This being pretty much the first issue of this Thunderbird Pro Stock kit. Very sought after and popular Bob Glidden Pro Stock. Let's take a look at it. And first, taking a look at the side box art, you can really get a good look at what the chassis was like. And this was depicting a Don Hardy chassis, very typical in a lot of Pro Stocks back in the early 80s, actually throughout the 80s and into the early 90s. And even in the 70s, this was a design that was used, very popular by Don Hardy. And he built a lot of Pro Stock cars in the 70s and in the 80s. And you can just see the much more accuracy compared to the Pinto kit from MPC in the early 70s. They just really strived for realism and detail and accuracy when they came out with these. These kits were just a mind blower when they came out. And I also want to add that this is some of my most favorite box art was in these Monogram race cars in the 80s. I just love the box art, just like in the stock cars. The painting of the race car and everything. It's just love these kits. So let's take a look. And of course, we're going to start with the body. This is an outstanding depiction of an 83 to 86 Ford Thunderbird. They did a fantastic job with this. And this kit depicts Bob Glidden's car from the 84 season. Looks like a Thunderbird. And under the hood, they did all the neat tin work that was popular in the 80s with the Pro Stock cars. And it really fit really good with the chassis once you got the chassis up in there. This particular kit, where you would find in some of the other Thunderbirds, there's a depression here for two rear ducktail spoilers that Glidden used and a couple other guys used in the early 80s. There's also another version of this body where this is all filled in and you got a full trunk here, and there was a more flat all the way across typical Pro Stock spoiler that would go on there. Those are the differences. That's the only differences they ever made with this body. They did this particular version with this type of rear spoiler and the hood scoop, which I'm going to show you in a little bit, that was a little different in this kit. They also did the Ricky Smith Motorcraft Thunderbird. They were the early versions of it. And later the Budweiser Motorcraft Thunderbird of Frank Iaconio's came out, and it had the full rear wing and the molded on hood scoop that was molded onto the hood. Wasn't as nice as the hood scoop that came in this kit. So it's always neat when you get a hold of one of these old ones to build one of these old Pro Stock Fords. Now we'll take a look at the chassis, the start of it, the basic frame, floor, nice tubs for the wheel tubs, beautiful detail of the bead rolling. The underside shows a lot of really good, the bead rolling again, a lot of the good fabrication structure. The tubing, and there was tubing that you add on that would come across fitting the frames all together that is put in after you were to get the engine and transmission in. The lower control arms, just an outstanding, beautiful, accurate rendition of a Don Hardy Pro Stock chassis. Moving on to other chassis parts, a piece of it came off, but you've got the main roll cage and bracings, and this is that lower portion I showed you that was missing on the underside that gets glued in after you get the transmission in. Your front support bars that go in the engine bay and also hold up the coilover shock struts, I should say. And you have beautiful 4-link with a wheelie bar. Let me flip this over. There's the third member for the Ford 9-inch racing rear end. There's a few things that have fallen off of this tree. You know, that happens with the kits, and they're been around for a while. This tree has a really beautiful big block Ford engine, nice Lenco transmission, coilovers for the rear, a lot of little detail, a lot of neat little detail. Here's the piece that would separate the driver compartment from the trunk area. This is the fuel cell that goes into the trunk area. Just a lot of nice stuff. The big heads, the big intake manifold. Right here, this is something that I always thought was really cool. This is the front motor plate that held the engine into the chassis, and there's the water pump and timing cover. And then right over here there was the ignition boxes. It's actually upside down. That's what it looks like. But it depicts some, I believe those would have been Mallory ignition packs. Again, some of the stuff has fallen off, but there's two batteries. They both look like that. Got a pair of nice racing seats. Your McPherson struts, your rack and pinion steering, and some really neat headers. That the other pieces are in the box, but you get a good idea how these headers are. Again, we got some missing pieces on this tree, but here we got the rest of the roll cage and everything, and of course that beefed up Ford 9-inch rear end. Just a really nice 9-inch rear end. And then typical of Monogram, though, they would never complete the tops of them. The cars were so low you can't see it, so they just didn't bother with that. But from underneath, it looked really, really tough looking. And of course that third member fit in there, which had a lot of detail to it, as you saw earlier. Usually I start this off before I show the body is the instruction sheet. I forgot about this. It was at the bottom. But again, typical instruction sheet for this kit you'd see in all the other ones. But very detailed, outstanding illustrations. You can really tell what goes where. Here you can see those headers. Very simple to put together. This kit really falls together really good. And there it shows the other ones you could get. And they also did the Camaros. We're not covering those in this episode. We're just focusing on the Thunderbirds. Some of the remaining parts in the box. The hood, which is different. If a lot of you commonly know the Red Hot Pro Street that they put out later on, Monogram did, trying to jump on the Pro Street craze, how it had a different hood, and I'm going to show that in a little bit, along with the hood scoop. This hood scoop is just so cool. This 3-piece hood scoop. You got the lower portion that I can show you. I believe it actually works that it sits on top of the carburetors, so you put that hood scoop on, the hood would actually slide over it like that. It's not attached to the hood, which was a really cool thing. And then you had your lower portion, and you can see how it fit onto the carburetors. That piece just slipped right onto there. And then you got this piece that went onto there, and it came out with a really cool looking square boxed snorkel that was really popular in the 80s before they went to the Aero scoops that you started to see in some of the later Pro Stocks from Monogram. But boy, this is just a good looking hood scoop. Just one of the neatest. If you ever find one of these, again, like I always say, you're looking at the swap meet and you find this kit and you get all excited, and this could be one of the main reasons why you want to get this kit, because the other ones are pretty easy to find, like the Red Hot. This, I can almost guarantee you, this hood scoop will be missing. Always look and make sure this hood scoop is in here, because this was a desired piece. Really nice firewall. It's just the rest of the stuff that's kind of sitting in at the bottom of the box. It fell off the trees. Rest of the roll cage is the part that's the down bars going into the trunk. The bumper, the front bumper to the car. The rear bumper. And a very pro stock looking stock replica dashboard. Again, the rules were the dashboard had to look stock, but these were usually fiberglass replicas of the stock dashboard, and they were very plain, and they would just put their gauges that they needed. Now moving on to the chrome tree. This kit would come with a couple of different wheels, mostly these very popular Krager Ultra lights in most of the kits, but later on they did an updated version that was the 87 Thunderbird of Bob Glidden's, and this chrome tree was still in there. You would even find this grill and these headlights in the updated version, but it had the very popular Krager drag stars. You got some really good, very thin glass. The glass is really good. You got the side pieces, because again you have to have windows in the doors. Very nice tail lights that you could paint with transparent red. But look how super thin that is. I mean, that just would give you a really good look when the car is completed. Last, we've got these honking big drag slicks that were in every Monogram drag car, including the funny cars. So they were a little bit too big for Pro Stocks, but they worked pretty good. They were awesome. Very good Goodyear lettering on them. There was an inside piece because they were hollow, and you just would pop this in. You just pop it in like that. You got the inside of the tire, and then onto the Goodyear front runners. They were really nice, really accurate of the day. The engraving of the tread, and it said Goodyear front runner on it. You could paint them or not if you had a good steady hand. What I always liked about these is if you got your paint just right and you had a good steady hand, you could really paint out those letters nice. They have a nice border to hold the paint in. It's very good raised outline. These just look really outstanding for front runners on a drag car. So most of mine got rated for other models I built. So it's always hard to find those. We almost forgot the decals. Really nice for back in the day. Decals were always a pain with the kit decals. These have a tendency to not really make it through the years. But again, if you shoot some clear on them, and I'm going to do an episode on that, you can save these. But I believe there's aftermarket decals today to do this car, that there's really no need to use the kit decals anymore. Okay, so before we close the lid on this kit, I just want to show you something really quick. This is another version of the kit. It's the Budweiser Motorcraft Pro Stock, driven by Frank Iaconio. And what they did here is, you can see this is still a sealed kit, so I'm not going to bust it all open. But you can see how this hood is a little different from the Bob Glidden kit, where the hood scoop, the lower portion is molded to the hood, and then there was this lower portion right here of the upper portion of the hood scoop, and then somewhere floating around in here, right here, you can see the upper portion of that hood scoop. And then you can also see on this how there's no cutouts or recessed areas for the dual rear wing that the Bob Glidden kit had. And this kit would come with a separate chrome tree that would have the full wing spoiler that was more common, you would see on Pro Stocks even up to these days. That was the only minor difference. Other than that, it was the same exact kit. But this was the kit that was to later be used on Monogram's Pro Street series. They called it the Red Hot, and to make it into a Pro Street, they basically put decals for license plates, and they tinted the glass, which was kind of a bummer to try to do Pro Stocks. And all the chrome was gold for some reason. If you're familiar with the Pro Street series, which also included a same type of version of the Camaro from the Pro Stock Camaro, and then they did another body to fit on the Pro Stock Camaro kit that was a Firebird. And that was the only time we ever saw the early mid-80s Firebird Pro Stock body. So there we go with that Pro Stock kit. Again, this is just an outstanding kit even to this day to build yourself an 80s Pro Stock. These kits even fit in today's standards of kits. It's outstanding. It's extremely accurate. Doing a Don Hardy's Pro Stock chassis, a Ford Thunderbird, you can't beat it. It is really outstanding, and if you ever see these at the swap meet, pick one up. It's a fun kit to build, and you will get a lot of enjoyment out of it, and you'll have a really, really cool built model sitting on your shelves. That's it for this episode of Luka's Kits. Thanks for watching. Hit that like button and subscribe. Bust the cellophane on those kits and build them. Let's have a blast. We'll see you in the next episode.